Ever been in a meeting where someone grumbled, "This could have been an email"? They're really saying that the information being delivered was in some way inappropriate for a meeting. Like, imagine if two different sneaker designers set up an hour-long meeting for 10 people, but spend the whole time discussing a single neon pink lightning bolt motif. The sales reps and marketing team that listened to them for an hour probably didn't need to waste the time, and they should have just gotten the email about which direction the team finally chose. But that's just their side of the story. The designer calling the meeting probably thought that every person's time was well spent in this meeting. It's not cut and dry. When deciding how to present or share information, we often have to decide between media. Not just email and meetings, but also video, formal report, casual text message, or any other medium we can use to communicate. And just like we learned when we talked about context in media, what we choose changes our message. Today, we'll talk about how to conduct what we'll call a remediation analysis, which is a kind of writing that helps us evaluate how effective a given project is in its medium and how to change it around to fit a new medium. Hi, I'm Dr. Emily Zarka, and this is Study Hall Rhetoric and Composition. We've discussed how the medium affects our writing in other episodes, but to recap, the medium is the form or material we use to create our text. Changing the medium of a message or idea is called remediation, and it puts it in a new context and affects what the audience is able to take from it. For instance, if I take a long novel and turn it into an audiobook, I can cast different actors and actresses for each speaking role, helping the listener follow along and get more engaged in the storylines. Like, the audiobook offers the chance to have an actual slithery, scary voice for the villain, while the novel just has to imply it. And slithery is a bit difficult to imagine. In this series, we periodically drill down into a particular kind of writing to help us put our writing process knowledge to work in a specific project. This time, we're looking at a kind of writing called a remediation analysis. While the name we're using is specific to Study Hall and ASU, you may also encounter a similar process elsewhere, where it might be called a media analysis or remix. Whatever you call it, a remediation analysis is where we can evaluate and decide which medium will really work best for our message. As with many kinds of analysis, we can casually analyze, quickly picking a genre, or we can dig deeper with a formal remediation analysis that is presented as an essay or a presentation. Today, we're mostly focusing on how to make a more formal remediation analysis. This project, as it sounds, is a way to write about writing, investigating how a message would be more or less successful depending on the medium we use. Writing it out helps us investigate thoroughly and pick the best option. This is an interesting process because it can be used as part of our invention or planning for any project. Just a quick evaluation of the options we have for kinds of writing and their relative benefits. Thinking through multiple forms the project could take is, after all, part of the start of many projects. But there are plenty of messages where the medium is so important that a remediation analysis is a whole project in itself that comes first. Remediation can also come after a message has been created once, and we decide it could have a different impact if it was done again in a new genre. A great place to see this is in instructional documentation, or media meant to teach us how to use, make, or do something. Instructional documentation is all around us. From detailed project manuals to video tutorials for work software to IKEA furniture instructions. It's created by designers, coders, and communicators of all different kinds. So there's a decent chance we'll find ourselves making some instructional documentation someday. Every time we write to teach, we have to decide what medium will work best for our audience to learn. And typically, we'll have plenty of options to choose from. Figuring those options out is an important part of a remediation analysis. Let's say we want to teach someone to make a cake through instructional documentation. While we could opt for a face-to-face class in a specialized kitchen classroom, there are many kinds of instructional documentation we can try out at home. For example, many YouTube cooking tutorials show a bird's eye view of a kitchen countertop, with hands physically adding the eggs, mixing the flour, and so on, alongside helpful text identifying exactly how much sugar was in that scoop. Many inexperienced bakers could still learn to bake a cake if they followed along with the video, pausing to read the measurements along the way. There are also more traditional recipes, with a list of ingredients followed by a list of written steps. More experienced cooks will find these easy to follow and check with throughout, since they'll recognize phrases like cream the butter and sugar and know what to do without the visual aid of the video. Finally, there is instructional documentation that relies even more on our expertise. In the show The Great British Bake Off, one of the baking challenges involves getting a simplified recipe that might have a step that only says bake the cake. That means the baker must rely on their knowledge of other recipes to decide the temperature and time to bake. High stakes if we want that Paul Hollywood handshake. There are also formats that don't work particularly well for baking a cake. While some folks may use audio recordings to listen to a recipe, there are ways in which it can be a tough medium. We may need to listen, rewind, listen again, and so on. And a long narrative blog post about the months of research the writer put into the recipe won't be so helpful for someone just trying to remember if they need a quarter cup or half cup of flour. Maybe not cumbersome for everyone, but many bakers find that a video tutorial or text recipe will help them most. If we want to start narrowing the options down so we can pick the best medium for our instructions for baking a cake, we have a lot to consider. How knowledgeable our audience is already, how much they want to refer back to the documentation, and even whether they'll have hands covered in flour and dough when they need to scroll and check on the next step. To see how a remediation analysis can help us make a decision about what medium we need, let's look at another example. Say we need to teach 3 other members of our team how to use the new instant messaging system at our company. In this course, to conduct a remediation analysis for instructional documentation, or any kind of writing, we go through 6 steps. We start by clarifying the task as much as we can. We need to know what elements we want to get across to someone. So for our instructional documentation on the instant messaging system, we need to figure out how much of the functionality really matters. If our documentation covers every feature of the software, it'll be long and maybe boring, and people may or may not stick with it long enough to learn the top things they need to know. So say we've narrowed the task down to the top 4 actions they'll need to effectively message each other. Now we define the audience. With apps like a messaging platform, knowing how tech-savvy our 3 team members are can help. Are they hitting reply all when they meant to reply to one person? Considerations about our audience like this will help us walk the line between sharing too much information and not sharing enough to be understood. At this point, we identify a small amount of documentation options. We don't have to consider, say, 16 ways to do it, but we should figure out maybe 3 options that could be most helpful. For our options, let's consider a physical piece of documentation posted in the break room, an email with picture screenshots, and a screen share video, where we narrate a voiceover while doing the tasks on screen. Within each of these 3 genres or media options, we create metrics or criteria for success and compare. For our IM instructions, our criteria for success are effective explanation, easy access and re-access, and not taking too long to make. A physical piece of documentation left in the break room ends up being fast to create, but kind of inconvenient, because users can't use it side by side with the messaging app on their computers. And explaining everything in words could be hard. We might be left saying something like, click on the green person icon in the upper left-hand corner next to the main menu, when a picture of the icon would do. An email is more accessible, still doesn't take that long to make, and has pictures to make the text part a little less long and hard to scan. It still might be tricky to translate the email's explanation into actually using the software, and in practice, lots of people delete emails after reading them, meaning that we might have to send it again and again as people forget the instructions. Finally, we have the screen share video. Colleagues can see exactly what they need to do in the app itself, and the demonstration element makes it very effective with a wide audience. Colleagues can rewatch it if we send them the link, making this more accessible. While getting familiar with the screen share software may take us a few minutes, this isn't even a long, drawn-out option. Once we're recording, it'll only take as long as completing each of the 4 actions we're teaching our colleagues to do normally takes. In the end, given our criteria for success, the video will most likely be the best option. And that's the last step. Choose a medium that is most successful given our metrics. At this point, if our manager asks us why we used a video, we've got great justifications and can show that we considered other options. Not every project will have the same criteria for success. If we're making an online college course, for instance, we may have to deliberately leave some questions unanswered because one of our goals is to get the students engaged and answer them for themselves. It just depends on what we're aiming for. We do a quick form of remediation analysis every time we are facing a potential writing project, even if we immediately assume that we'll just do a well-accepted standard approach. What's cool about learning to do remediation analysis well is that we are allowed to actually explore out-of-the-box options. We don't have to complicate the process infinitely, but by digging a bit below the surface and seeing how we can shape our message with different media, we get way more valuable options as writers. We might realize that creating a board game will be a better option than writing a final paper, or even that sometimes the meeting was better than an email. Thanks for watching Study Hall Rhetoric and Composition, which is part of the Study Hall Project, a partnership between ASU and Crash Course. If you like this video and want to keep learning with us, be sure to subscribe. You can learn more about Study Hall and the videos produced by Crash Course at ASU in the links in the description. See you next time.